Hello, my dear sisters. Welcome to the Holiness teaching. We're now on the second topic of the series, and the title of our topic is The Saints Next Door. Sisters, is there at one time in your life ask yourself the question, can I be a saint? How can I be a saint? Or the question, can I be holy? And how can I be holy? You know, I asked the same question when I saw the title of the topic. And our topic now begins with a Bible verse from 1 Peter chapter 1 verse 16, and it says, "Be holy because I am holy." Quite a tall order, because if we know that the word or the verse comes from someone whose life we must follow. We are all called to holiness, but you might be wondering whether this is indeed possible for us who are ordinary people. When we talk about saints, we think of them as extraordinary people who lived lives of martyrdom and heroic deeds. They are the blessed ones mentioned in the previous topic. They are the imitators of Christ, who is the face of the Beatitudes. As it portrays a life of great sacrifice and immense strength, living out the Beatitudes might seem unattainable, difficult, and out of reach. However, Pope Francis assures us that saints are like us, ordinary people. And so, my dear sisters, we too can be holy. We can all be holy because the Lord will definitely help us. He will lead us with His grace. In his apostolic exhortation, Gaudete et Exultate, he mentions a great cloud of witnesses that encourage us to move forward to holiness, include Abraham, Sarah, Moses, and the canonized saints, but also ordinary people like our parents, our grandparents, and people from all walks of life whose lives may not be perfect, but they please the Lord in the many things they did out of love for God and for neighbor. Yes, my dear sisters, saints are here among us, here and right now. Pope Francis further states that very often holiness is found in our next door neighbors, those who, living in our midst, reflect God's presence, the saints next door. We are all called to holiness, as I mentioned earlier. Holiness is for everybody. The Pope goes on saying that holiness can be seen in ordinary people. And who are these ordinary people that he is referring to? First, we have our parents who raised their children, who raised us with so much love and who work hard to support their families. Another ordinary people are the sick people who offer their sufferings for the church and for others. And then we have the elderly who alone and yet pray for others and make offerings. And then, of course, we have our priests who are hidden away but work in their parishes with a lot of love by teaching catechesis for children, caring for the elderly and the sick, and preparing people for marriage. And this is their daily routine, the same things over and over again. But, my dear sisters, they do not get bored because their foundation is the rock. And who is the rock? It is Jesus Himself. These are people who put the needs of others before their own, living and sharing God's love even through their own problems and struggles. In the ordinariness of their lives, they live out the gospel. Holiness can be found in the most humble, the unknown, who are the true witnesses of the gospel, living lives of firm faith and ardent charity. As Saint Teresa Benedict of the Cross suggests, real history is made by so many of them. The most decisive turning points of world history are formed not only by the greatest heroes, not only by the greatest saints, but by people whom no history book mentions. And these people, my dear sisters, will only be revealed during the judgment day. The call to holiness is addressed to all of us. And even more so, the Lord addresses this call personally to you, to me. Be holy as I am holy. It is written in Leviticus chapter 11, verse 44. And of course, in the first Bible verse that I mentioned earlier, from 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 16. So, in whatever condition or state you're in, you are called to be perfect as the Father is perfect, each one of you in your own way. There are unquestionably a great number of saints who have answered this call to holiness. You might even have your own favorite saints who inspire you. But oftentimes, it seems impossible and daunting to follow in their footsteps. In fact, we should not copy their examples of holiness. Why? Because we might lose our way to the path of holiness that God had intended for each one of us. We all have gifts personally given by our gracious God, by our generous God. And we should use these gifts and bring out the best of ourselves. In the first letter of St. Peter, there lies the invitation to holiness using our gifts. If you can read with me, please join me. As each one has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. Whoever preaches, let it be with the words of God. Whoever serves, let it be with the strength that God supplies, so that in all things God may be glorified through Jesus Christ. So, my dear sisters, let us respond to this invitation with joy, with much, much joy. We don't have to be a nun or a religious to be holy. We are called to be holy by living our lives in God's love, bearing witness in everything we do, wherever we find ourselves. So, if you are called to the religious or consecrated life, be holy. by living your commitment with joy. If you are married, be holy by loving and caring for your husband. Infidelity. If you are a parent or a grandparent, be holy by passionately teaching your children or your grandchildren about Jesus Christ. If you are a catechist or a teacher, you can be holy. How? By teaching the truth and making God's presence known and felt and grow in your students' hearts. And if you are working for a living, again, you can be holy. You can be holy by laboring with integrity. Integrity, my dear sisters. Using your skills in the service of your brothers and sisters. And if you are a public servant or a government official or you have position of authority, how can you be holy? You can be holy by working in all humility for the common good, ridding yourself of selfish ambition or personal or financial gain. So, whatever your state of life is, there is a road to sainthood. It can be at home, on the streets, at work, at church. The roads are endless, my dear sisters. And this holiness to which the Lord calls you will grow through small gestures. Pope Francis cites an example, and he said, a woman goes shopping. She meets a neighbor, and then they begin to speak. They begin telling stories, and the gossip starts. But if she says in her heart, no, I will not speak badly of anyone. Sisters, this is a step forward in holiness. And then probably later at home, one of her children wants to talk to her of her hopes and dreams. And even though she's tired, she sits down, listens with patience and love. That again, my dear sisters, is holiness. That is another sacrifice that brings holiness. And probably later she experiences some anxiety, but recalling the love of the Virgin Mary, she takes her rosary and prays with faith. Yet another path of holiness. And later still, she goes out onto the street, encounters a poor person, and stops to say a kind word to him or give him something. It's one more step to holiness. It's according to Pope Francis. In every step towards holiness will make us better people, freeing us from being absorbed with ourselves and opening us up to attend to the needs of others. Start with simple gestures. Simple gestures. And what are these simple gestures? An act of tenderness, as you say, good morning or good day with a smile to somebody you meet on the street. That's a small gesture. Or a generous assistance as you help an elderly person cross the street or carry his grocery bag, open the door for her, or giving up your seat in the bus, for her, small gesture that leads us to holiness. A moment spent listening to a friend pouring out her troubles or pain instead of watching your favorite story on TV, you know, and taking a well deserved rest, that is a step to holiness. Or a visit to somebody who's sick, or a good or kind word to colleagues who is having a bad day, a light tap on the shoulder, or a squeeze of a hand to somebody who just received some bad news. Sisters, these simple gestures may seem small, but they can do a lot to the other person, lifting them up. And more significantly, to a loving God who sees everything. These gestures are eternal because they are done out of love for the other person, for the other person and not for ourselves. This small gesture shaped sainthood in such a way that the work, even in illness, in suffering, or in difficulty, is open to God. However, even with small gestures, you might get discouraged in traveling this road as you encounter failures and challenges. Rightly so. In Gaudete et Exultate, Pope Francis states that at times life presents great challenges. Through them, the Lord calls us anew to a conversion that can make His grace more evident in our lives, in order that we may share His holiness. That phrase comes from Hebrews chapter 12, verse 10, in order that we may share His holiness. So, plainly said, when you fall or fail, you just have to pick up yourself while holding on to the Lord and get back on the road again, moving on towards holiness. Do ordinary things in an extraordinary way. When Cardinal Francois Xavier Nguyen Van Thuan, I hope it's the correct pronunciation, when he was imprisoned for his faith by the communist government in Vietnam, he refused to waste time waiting for the day he would be set free. And he decided, and I quote, I will seize the occasions that present themselves every day. I will accomplish ordinary actions in an extraordinary way. End of quote. So, just like St. Paul, imprisonment didn't deter him from preaching. While he was incarcerated, sisters, you know what he did? He smuggled out messages to his people on scraps of paper. And the brief reflections, copied by hand and circulated within Vietnamese community, have been printed in the book entitled The Road of Hope. Through a network of influential overseas Vietnamese, The Road of Hope was distributed worldwide. And another book entitled Prayers of Hope contains his prayers written in prison. Ordinary actions done in extraordinary way, just like the real heroes of the COVID-19 lockdown. the doctors, the nurses, the health workers, the grocery workers, the pharmacy workers, the drivers, the street cleaners, the janitors, the garbage collectors, the public transport workers, the police and the military personnel. The list goes on. These people who worked not only because they had to, but because they wanted to. They went out and worked, risking exposure in the process out of concern for others. Their ordinary jobs were done in extraordinary way because there was love, but not only love, there was compassion in every action, with courage and sacrifice. Oftentimes done with joy, even when there was the danger of contamination. They never thought of themselves, dying to themselves so that others may live or continue to live. So let us watch this video clip featuring the heroes of the lockdown being honored and thanked by several people.
Pagpupugay para sa ating mga frontliners natin mga Filipino sa panganib na dulot ng COVID-19.
Sa lahat ng mga health workers at mga kawani ng uniform service.
Sa mga nagtatrabaho sa grocery at pharmacy,
gusto po namin malaman nyo na na-appreciate po namin lahat ng ginagawa nyo para sa amin.
Damo nga salamat han iyo serbisyo.
Iturong na kayo kumakanayon iti Apo.
Kinadalagid namon kamo sa amon nga pagpangumuyo.
Dahil sa inyo at sa tulong ng Panginoon, malalampasan natin ang pagsubok na ito. Dahil sa inyo, kaya nating iligtas ang Pilipinas sa COVID-19.
So aside from the people I've mentioned earlier, we should not forget all the volunteers who gave their time, who gave their talent, who gave their treasure. So we could see people cooking food, packing them, and giving them away for free. We could see also people assembling bags of canned goods and basic supplies and then distributing them to those who lost their jobs or were in dire need. And then we could see people bringing food and basic supplies to people unable to get out. And we also knew of people running errands for neighbors and even for strangers. Imagine, sisters, for strangers, they don't even know them. So they go door to door in their neighborhood asking around if people needed help in any way. Extraordinary still are deeds of poor people who in their poverty, when they have just barely enough, deny themselves and offer up something for others to take their place, so to speak, just like the pizza delivery guy who only earns a minimum wage with a pregnant wife and a son. He used his tips, the tips that is being given by people who buys pizza. And then those tips are used, or he used the tips to buy food for the homeless in his delivery route. What a wonderful gesture. Yes, it may be small gesture, simple gesture, but it is so heartwarming to know that there are so many people offering their services, their help to people who are in need. And then there is this teenager who gave up his spot in the queue so that his food ration can be given to another child, whom he said needs it more than him, even if he was hungry himself. And then there is this housewife who used the money that was supposed to feed her family of five for a month to buy ingredients to cook up a meal. And her housemates, seeing that wonderful gesture, chip in as well. So, with her husband, brother-in-law, and housemates, they packed the food and handed them over to 200 Dubai jobless migrants during lockdown. Other people eventually donated food, so she was able to continue giving away another 200 free meals a day for a while. So let us watch this video again. You can see the Dubai housewife.
It's what for, to be honest. My daughter is even out of school at her age. But it's not the reason for me not to help. Daddy, go. Oh yeah, you check now. Due to pandemic, those people who's in life, they're the ones affected by it. They lost their job, their visit visas, because they cannot find a job right now because of the situation. Life is so hard and they don't have anyone to depend on. Which government will give them their daily needs? To whom they should ask? If I will stop this, many people will stop eating.
Another simple gesture by that Dubai housewife, a small gesture, but I know it will lead her to holiness, or it led her to holiness. Then another small gesture poor of poor people is a group of garbage scavengers who decided to pool all the food they had to share among themselves in their destitute neighborhood. Sisters, we are flooded with so many heartwarming stories of people who have little or less but give more. The lockdown also produced another group of saints next door. All over the world, artists emerged, performing in their homes, in their balconies, in empty concert halls, and some other places. And individually or banded together, they made a beautiful song or a beautiful music. They sang, they danced, they did comedy skits even, either live or recorded and posted in the various social media platforms. They offer their talents, their skills, or art to the public for free. All they wanted was to entertain, to make people smile, to make people laugh, and so forget, even for a while, this unseen enemy of a virus that had disturbed our lives and made us withdraw in fear. They decided to give a little light to an otherwise darkened world. So let us watch this video clip again of these artists and musicians coming together during the lockdown to offer a message of hope and encouragement to all. Evidently, at other times, we need only to find a more perfect way of offering what we are already doing, whatever we love to do, or whatever we are good at, just like the artist mentioned earlier, or the artist that you've seen in the video. These ordinary people do extraordinary things or do things extraordinarily because apart from love, they rise above their own limitations to reach out to others. They move past themselves to give to others, to care and to work for others. Wounded souls healing the wounds of others. Stricken soldiers still fighting the battle. They want to help. They want to do something. They want to make a difference. They don't wait for things to be all rosy or sunny before they step into charity. Their place and time to be holy is here and now, constantly doing good even in their own bad times. So many of these saints are unnamed, unknown, or going about their work without any regard for recognition or appreciation. They prefer to take a back seat to fame into anonymity, thrusting humility in the forefront to the point of suffering humiliations, keeping silent for the sake of peace and unity. They praise others instead of boasting of themselves, enduring complaints and insults just like Jesus did. And yes, saints are in heaven. We know, we all know that. Saints are in heaven. But they are also here on earth, in our world, around us, next door, ordinary people. Again, you might recognize them in your parents, in your friends, in your co-workers, or even in the street cleaner, or in the waitress who manages to be pleasant, even towards the end of the day when weariness is creeping up. They are kind, they are gentle and humble. They are patient and they persevere. They give and they love. So, dear sisters, at this point, we will do some reflection. So, the reflection question is, who among the people you know around you are saints next door? And then, how are they holy as ordinary people? Do it in a prayerful manner. Let's pray for the person or persons identified as being holy as ordinary people. Thank God for them. As we end part 1 of our session, please take time to reflect on how you can be holy in your own way, in simple ways, and in small gestures. And pray for the grace to be holy.